Carl is in his first layer of epoxy, and today we're going to show you how we did it. Yes, today we are starting the process of getting Carl in primer, and we're actually rolling on this primer with Eastwood's OptiFlow. Eastwood sent over their OptiFlow priming kit that has everything we need, from primers to rollers, all the way down to sandpaper and blocks we need for the bodywork. If you saw last week's episode, we just got Carl completely sanded down and ready for primer. If you haven't seen that, check it out here. But before we got to priming, there was still one more thing we needed to do. In order to get in all of the nooks and crannies, we had to take out the front and back windshields, which was quite horrifying to try.
Oh, nice. Got it?
Ew!
Oh, what? Ah, there's the screw.
After taking out the 4 screws, the manual said that we needed to cut the lip of the gasket before pushing the windshield out.
And I think it'll make sense if we just kind of cut it off the top. Since we're going to take it, push the top out, if we really cut the sides and the top and almost leave the bottom alone, I think we can just fold it out. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Oh, I think we might have to take the rear view out, Elle. Okay, I'm gonna give it a little shove. You tell me if you see it moving.
Oh yeah, it's moving.
Yeah, it's moving.
That's it.
Oh.
Oh, that's horrifying.
Oh my gosh, look!
Wait, whoa, 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 whoa.
Okay, so let's just gently pull. Tell me if you can lift that. Are you okay?
With the windshield out, we had to go back to the dirty task of scraping out all the old sealant, cleaning it up with pre-painting prep, and then sanding down the edges to get them ready for primer.
That was good.
Okay, so this is crazy. It's making me nauseous. It's giving me a headache. So the windshields are out. It's just stressful because we've got everything torn down and it's all sanded and
It's just weird.
it's weird and stressful, and now we're about to do primer and oh, what if we mess up and
It's okay though. We can do it. We're gonna blow him off one more time.
yeah.
And then we'll do it.
Yep. Yes, this was stressful, but mainly because this was the night before we left for a big car show in Carlisle. If you haven't seen the Carlisle video, check it out here. We knew that the epoxy would have to sit for 5 whole days, so we really didn't want to miss this small window before we left. But it was already 7 o'clock that night, so we had to get moving. Right now I'm just wiping everything down with the tack rag on the roof, and Dad is going in with some pre and some and a towel, and he's making sure that we don't have anything in the grooves that the car has. Okay, so this is everything we have. We have rollers, foam brushes, and our primer, our catalyst, mixing bowls, which we're going to mix 1-to-1, a 1-to-1 ratio. I feel like Evan and Caitlin, which nobody who probably watches this channel knows that channel, but I feel like Evan and Caitlin because they do a lot of like resin stuff, so they have to do a lot of like 1-to-1 ratios. I feel so awesome. We're doing a 1-to-1 ratio of our primer and our catalyst, and we are starting with the roof, going top down.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go up to the 5,
Yeah.
that first 5 right there.
My favorite color. There.
Let's move it up to the edge.
Eastwood recommended that when we first put the paint on the roller that we roll it out on some painter's paper so that we get it completely even before we start putting it on the car. I was definitely nervous to make that first pass, but we just jumped in.
Where you went, yeah, and cross over. Very nice. And while you're doing that, I'm going to do this.
In addition to using the rollers, we also used some foam brushes to get in any small areas that we just couldn't roll on.
Is it going on pretty smooth? Oh dear. Okay.
The instructions said to apply one coat and then wait for 30 minutes before applying the next coat. So we covered our pan and rollers in plastic wrap just to make sure nothing dried out.
Good job, Ellen. Boy, it's really even. I don't see any lines in that at all. Good job.
After our second coat on the roof, it started to look more even, and we began to figure out our process. Applying one coat to an area, moving to the next area, and then once that area was done, coming back to the first area to apply our next coat. Again, we were pretty nervous to do this whole thing, but the roll-on system made it pretty easy, and we just kept going. We have got Carl almost completely done. We have one more coat to do on basically half the car. Okay, it's almost 1 a.m. We finally got the car finished, painted. It's completely primered, There are bugs everywhere. It got all over the paint. We'll figure that out later. But we're obviously not the best at this. But I think we did a good job for where we're at, and the finish actually looks pretty good, so I'm proud of us. And I just want to sleep because it's 1 a.m. Okay, it's been over a week since we put the epoxy primer on, and it's looking pretty good. There's some drips and runs and texture in some places, but it really doesn't matter because we're gonna do some sanding over this and then put more primer, more epoxy, then more sanding, then more primer, then more sanding. So this is just a jumping off spot, and it looks pretty good for our first time doing this. In a couple of weeks, Dad and I will be going to Falcon Nationals, and our plan had been to have the car completely painted by then. But after some thinking and talking to a few friends, we realized that that is a very ambitious goal and is not going to happen, unfortunately. So we're gonna get Carl to the next stage of primer before we go to Nationals, and then once we come back, then we'll paint. I was a little disappointed that we wouldn't get the car painted in time for Nationals, but I am happy that we're not rushing the hardest and most visible part of this entire process. So what I'm taking out of the garage is that hitting arbitrary milestones isn't as important as doing things right. Thank you so much to Eastwood for sending their OptiFlow roll-on primer to us. We really appreciate it, and it worked great. Thank you to my executive producer, Drew Carter, and if you would like to support me, you can go to my website at elliesgarage.com, and where you can find links to my Patreon and to my merch. I'll see you next time in the garage.